Hello.
Oh, hello, Barney.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello.
Bonjour.
Hi.
How you doing there? Yellow. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Yo.
Hello. 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 Hello.
Well, hello there, my friends. Welcome to episode number 2 of Customer Experience Tales from the Trenches. My name is Marc Mandel, and I'm so thrilled that you're here with us today to spend the next 40 or 45 minutes talking about the work that we both do and love in helping companies to improve their customer experiences. Knowing that this show, Tales from the Trenches, is a brand new show, this is only episode 2 that we've done so far, I thought right out of the gate I would take just a moment to introduce myself to you for those that don't know me already and that of the show. So again, I mentioned I'm Marc Mandel. I've been a long-time customer experience guy in this business. And I say long time, I'd say 25 years, maybe a little bit more even, before they even called it customer experience for sure, mostly on the vendor side. But I've been had the opportunity over the years to really link up with some amazing thought leaders and entrepreneurs in this space, some real groundbreaking, trailblazing people. Early in my career, I worked for companies like Strativity Group. We're doing some amazing consulting, transformational consulting. I helped launch a company called Clarabridge in the earliest days for Clarabridge. More recently, you may know me from my work at Allegiance, which is now part of the InMoment organization, or even more recently, companies like Customerville, and most recently, Question Pro, where I ran customer experience for North America. But I'll tell you this, just as a fact, when you work for a company, whether it be any of those companies or any companies that you may be working for, there's an expectation, maybe a said or unsaid expectation, that when you get enthusiastic about a new idea or a product or service, that enthusiasm needs to be limited and focused to your own company. And it imposes this kind of feeling of myopia or kind of tunnel vision, where all you can see and all you can really advocate for is your own company. It creates a really limited point of view, in my opinion. And so a few months ago, I decided to say, you know what? That limited view is really getting in the way of really finding the best work, the best innovation in the world of customer experience. So I decided to take a step back from that job. And instead of having just that limited field of view, that limited perspective of my own company, I can now widen the aperture of that lens and look at the entire industry as sort of my toolbox or my sandbox, and to be able to affiliate myself in different ways with some of the real best and brightest people in the business. And we're going to be continuing to introduce you as my friends here on these calls to those people who I think the world of and who really inspire me. If you think back on the very first episode of the show from last month, I brought a gentleman on named Marc Zides. Marc is one of these people who I really get inspired by, and he's such a brilliant guy in the area of artificial intelligence in customer experience work. Marc is the CEO of a company called Luminoso. If you don't know them, they're up in Boston, Massachusetts, and they do amazing AI work in CX. Check them out on the web, luminoso.com. Now, in thinking about episode 1, last month's episode, I'm going to let you in on a little kind of inside baseball trivia for just a moment, and be a little bit vulnerable in doing this. Like you guys, I've been doing these webinars and podcasts for a long time, but rarely, if ever, have I been on this side of the keyboard, the production side of the keyboard. And I'll tell you, last month going into that show, I was nervous. I could feel the butterflies in my stomach when I was getting ready for the show and starting the camera and getting it going. I was able to put them past it soon enough, but I was so afraid I was going to botch it up and mess it up that I was over focusing on that. But the reality is it turned out pretty good, and a lot of you guys who were there for that very first episode shared very supportive feedback, and I'm thankful to you for the feedback you shared. This show, meaning this program, Tales from the Trenches, is really the show manifestation of this new work that I'm doing. It's this idea of bringing some of those amazing trailblazing people and real thought leaders in the world of CX to you in very practical and applicable ways. Things we're going to talk about are not here to be sales pitches or marketing ideas, but they're really practical things that you can do in your business today, tomorrow, next week, to drive real lasting impact. Again, going into this new work in this new program, today's episode and going forward, we're going to be here to talk about a very important topic around that, and we'll get more to that in just a moment, which is how do we take this idea of our customer experience work that we do and love and embed it truly foundationally as bedrock in our business, and how do we make it lasting and sustainable and impactful by doing that truly thoughtfully. But more on that in a few minutes. I want to take just a moment and spend a couple of minutes here and talk about this concept of a wow moment. For me, a wow moment is that moment of surprise and delight, something that comes along and you never anticipated it and cause you to go, wow, that's cool. We all strive for those in our customer experience work that we do. And I'll tell you, I've had a few happen to me myself recently, one of which is a really memorable one that I thought I would share with you. But first, some context about it. For those of you that know me professionally, you know not only am I a customer experience guy, I've been in this specific part of the work, kind of this voice of the customer or VOC work for a long time. I've been part of VOC platform deployments in every industry you can think of. And I could tell you that, back in the old days, 4 or 5 years ago, it could be very practical or realistic to believe you could deploy a survey and get 25, 30% response rates on those surveys. People would take those surveys at least somewhat. But now fast forward to today, August of 2024, those 25, 30% response rates are now lucky to get 5 or 10%. I had a call with a client this morning who said he's getting 4% response rate on his survey. I was like, oh my God, what do you do? I said, there's 96% of your customers putting you in this blind spot of not having any idea what's going on with them. How do you serve a customer in the absence of data? It was probably during the very early days or just before the early days of COVID, I went to a CX conference, and one of the speakers did a workshop on some idea that he talked about in the future. He talked about there's going to be a future where in the absence of direct customer feedback data, we can anticipate our customer needs through things like modeling and AI and prediction. It's almost like he said, having a crystal ball on your desk where you could figure out which customers are going to behave certain ways so you can intervene where you need to, or better service them, or better upsell and cross-sell them, if you anticipate that they might be more likely to accept that offer or behave in other ways down the road in the future. The interesting proposition was to do that in the absence of data. Interestingly enough, it's hard enough to do with data to do that well. Imagine doing without data. And that was his whole thesis a few years ago. Well, fast forward to today, that future like that flying car future when AI is going to tell me what's going on with our customers is here, guys. It's real. And I had my mind blown recently by a company or a couple of companies, but one in particular that's doing this type of work and delivering on this today. I want you to check out a company, and we're going to bring the gentleman who runs that company on one of these calls in a month or two from now. The company is called OCX Cognition. And the gentleman I want to introduce you to, if you don't know him already, his name is Richard Owen. Richard, if you don't know Richard, or maybe his name's familiar, but you can't place him, Richard was the guy, the brains behind a company that used to be called Satmetrics. And if you don't know Satmetrics, they were a VOC platform company, but their real claim to fame was they were the co-inventor of Net Promoter Score along with the guys from Bain Consulting. And Richard built that company and sold that company and temporarily retired. And then he decided to get that band back together and solve this problem of what do you do when you don't get surveys taken anymore? What do you do when 95% or 90% or whatever it is of your customers say, yeah, I'm not going to do that survey? How do you get into the heads, into the hearts of these customers? And Richard has beaten exactly that. I'm not going to get more into this right now, but I want to invite you to check out Richard's company, OCX Cognition, and tell him Marc Mandel sent you. I think you'll be pretty impressed by what you see. Now, let's change gears. I'm going to take just a few minutes here and try to talk about one of my favorite books. I spent a little segment of each of these shows talking about a book, and I have a bunch of these books up on my shelf there. You may remember last month, I talked about a book called Experience Rules by Michael Hinshaw and Diane Majors, one of my favorite books. And some of you guys got copies of this book over the last few weeks as my thanks for being on the show with me. This month, I'm going to talk about a different book. I'm going to talk about a book that talks about a very big topic here, and another favorite of mine that takes a different angle of customer experience. This is called The CX and Culture Connection, Creating a Growth Flywheel by Approaching Customer Experience and Culture Together, by my good friend here in North Carolina, Matt Eagle. What makes this book important to me is that CX-EX connection. I'll say it this way, guys, and just take it as fact. Most companies that I've worked with over the years, they silo off CX and EX. And I think it's a mistake these days to do that. Now, for a lot of reasons that I'm sure are self-evident to some of you, but at the end of the day, if we as practitioners and as CX folks can all accept that customer experiences drive customer outcomes, what drives better customer experiences? And they are, how do we create a culture of service to really unlock our employees to better service our customers? How do we make sure that they know how to do the right thing, the right way, with the right customers? But now the challenge that we're faced with, if you believe the data that comes from companies, I don't know, like the Gallup poll, Gallup is going to tell us that somewhere in the bracket of 75% of the American workforce, they say, is either disengaged or actively disengaged at work. What that translates to is either these are people who are either at work and hating their jobs, or at work hating their jobs and actively looking for a new one. And yet, simultaneous to this, we are reliant on these same people to blow the customers' minds, to really delight them, to really give them the best possible service they can, and not just be sleepwalking through their jobs. There's an utter breakdown there. We can't expect better customer experiences generated or enabled by these employees if they are not in the right frame of mind and enabled and empowered to help. All that said, Matt unpacks that in his book, and he addresses it at the underlying culture level. And what do we do culturally to unlock and enable these people to overcome these challenges and to better serve their customers? It's a terrific book. I suggest you check it out. If you haven't, it's well worth it. Now, guys, we're about 12 or 13 minutes into this conversation already, and I want to really get right to the heart of this meeting. I really want to get to the reason why I've asked you to join me here, and that's to talk about one big topic. And the big topic for today, as you saw in some of the promotion for this show, is how do we make our CX work stickier, more lasting, and ultimately more impactful? There's no more important topic right now than getting the impact that we're setting out to get, because we're being judged day in and day out as CX thought leaders and practitioners in our work. And if we're not getting the results, that we're committing to, I could guarantee you it's just a matter of time until our bosses are going to start looking for the next guy to try to do that work, or worse yet, give up entirely on customer experience. There's a couple of people that I could tell you that I'm going to bring onto this show in just a second, who I really admire and who really inspire me. These are people who I'm going to tell you just as friends here on this call, that if someday I could be half as smart as them, it's a good day. And I want to introduce two guys right now to help me have this conversation. We're going to talk about this and unpack this idea of embedding customer experience throughout our business to make it lasting, to make it sticky, and to make it impactful. I'm going to bring on my friends Michael Hinshaw. And by the way, Michael Hinshaw is the gentleman who helped write this book that we talked about last month, and our friend Eric Smuda. So guys, let me bring you guys into this call and let's go have a good chat. Michael, Eric, thanks for being here.
Hey, Mark.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for being here. It dawns on me as we get this started that while we may all be amongst friends here on this call, some of us that are listening and may not know you guys from some of the great work that you've done. Could I ask each of you, we'll start with you, Michael, just to do a brief introduction for yourself and your business, and we'll go to you, Eric, and then we'll start to unpack the topic together.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Thank you again, Mark, for inviting me. I'll do this very quickly. I'm the president of a company called McorpCX, and like Mark, have been in the customer experience space specifically since I founded this company about 22 years ago. before customer experience was widely recognized. And we help companies ranging from Intel, Microsoft, Best Buy, and many, many others understand how to build CX capabilities internally and how to drive the kinds of customer-centric business results that we want to talk about here today. So thanks
Awesome.
again.
Thanks, Michael. Eric, do you want to do the same?
Sure. Thank you. Appreciate the invite to be here today. I am the Chief Experience Officer for a company called LIkewize. We are a device repair and insurance company based in Dallas, Texas. Prior to that, I've been multi-time CXO in the rental car industry and the IT industry, places like Compaq and HP, Hertz, Avis Budget Group, and I've done quite a bit of consulting in this space as well. So happy to be with everybody today. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. I hate to start a conversation like this, an important conversation, on a bit of a downer, but I thought we would just use a piece of information that was a headline in our industry a couple of months ago that I want to say came out of some research done by the people at Forrester. When they looked at some CX work done over the last number of months or a year or so, and they tallied it up, and they came up with a headline that said something like 75 or 70% of customer experience program work is destined for failure or has already been considered a failure. Whether that means because it hasn't gotten results, or maybe worse, it's just fallen apart and the train got off the rails. I wanted just to kind of get your thoughts on or perspectives on that. And then let's talk about maybe the antidote. If that's indeed something we can agree is true, let's talk about the antidote to that. What can companies do? What practical things can we do as CX practitioners to think differently about our own work and hopefully turn the ship around before it's too late? Can I start, let's say, Michael, with you, and just have your thoughts about this from because you've seen a bunch of companies, in your work, and what do you see in terms of the challenges to success in terms of the type of work that you do? So
I have to say that we similarly see or have seen kind of broadly those kinds of statistics play out in real life. I actually did a webinar with my friend and business associate Jeb DeSteele a little earlier this month, I think. And we did a global survey of CX leaders and about 220 respondents, something like that. And one of the questions we asked was, hey, how confident are you in your ability to measure the impact of your work over the last 12 months? Right. And mirroring to a degree, the stats being, of course, slightly different as all statistics are, right? But directionally aligned, 9% of those respondents were highly confident. 9% can't measure anything. They had no idea what impact they had at all. But bottom line is only 64% can measure some or not at all. So there's not a lot of linkage between business results and CX programs, broadly speaking. And with that, it's unsurprising to anyone, I would think, that executives are saying, geez, maybe CX isn't working, or maybe, to your point earlier, Mark, maybe I need someone else to do it.
Eric, have you seen something similar?
Yeah, certainly. None of those statistics surprise me. None of the research Michael just quoted surprises me. I think too many CX teams that I've seen get very focused on tactics and mechanics and, I got to do journey mapping. I got to measure NPS. I got to do, yes, you do need to do those things, or they can be very helpful tools, but that's all they are. They're tools. At the end of the day, if you're not driving business results, right? If you're not growing the customer base, retaining the customer base, selling more to the existing customer base, or doing all of that more cheaply, more inexpensively, why are you bothering, right? And I think that's where a lot of CX teams get in trouble, as Michael said, is they can't provide the linkage back to, did I help my company grow, or did I help my company save more money?
It's interesting, guys. Some of you on this show in the audience have heard me tell this anecdote before, but I think it bears repeating here, and a little bit of examination and some real reflective thought. It was 2 or 3 years ago, I decided I really wanted to work on my health, my personal health. And when I say my health, I really mean my weight. And I decided I'm going to lose some weight and get myself healthier. And I went to the store and I bought this $300 bathroom scale. It was a digital scale. It could Bluetooth to my cell phone, has all the charts and graphs you could possibly imagine about my weight loss journey that I'm going on. And for the first roughly month of my weight loss journey, I got on that scale every single day and I weighed myself every single day. And in some days, the weight was up a pound. And some days it was down a pound. And ultimately, nothing much was really getting better, or at least predictably better. And so after a month, I kind of went, hey, dummy, this is not about the scale. It's about changing my behaviors and really making a permanent sticky change in my lifestyle. And if I don't do that, the scale is going to simply bounce like an EKG chart. And I realized then that the scale is metaphorical, very much so, to a voice of the customer program, right? Where we're using the VOC more often than not just to be a trailing indicator of how are we doing, no different than stepping on a bathroom scale. And the more we rely as CX practitioners on our scale, or in this case, our VOC technology at face value to drive impact and change, it's no different than blaming the scale when I don't lose weight.
Yeah, but I mean, you think about any kind of measurement program, or the single metric, right? Depending on what your single metric is, NPS, CSAT, it's not dissimilar to saying you land on a one-lane road in the desert and there's a sign that says here's where you are, and you don't know how you got there and you don't know where to go from there. So the sign is actually pretty useless, but it is a sign that tells you exactly where you're at.
Interesting. Eric, what do you take on that?
Yeah, no, look, 100%. Everything both of you have said here. I think too many programs are focused on whatever their metric is. I use NPS as shorthand. It could be CSAT, could be anything, and the focus is on that number and not what's the relationship to business growth, or whether that's profitability growth or revenue growth or whatever it is. So and I've written about this in the past, too many CX practitioners are speaking the language of NPS and CSAT and response rates. Business leaders are speaking the language of dollars and growth. Right? Yep. And so if you can't tie what you're doing back to one of those things, you're speaking the wrong language and you're not having the impact that you can.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, you're thinking about CX programs. You were talking earlier about the Forrester research that showed that 60 some odd % of them are failing or on their way out. And we kind of see, broadly speaking, two kinds of CX leaders in organizations, and there's the ones that focus on things like design thinking. I mean, as a primary, right? The tools, the tactics that Eric was talking about earlier. And those are important. You do need to do those things, but it's not the answer. It's a means to an end. And that end is, as Eric talked about, and you've talked about also, Mark, is increased retention, greater top line revenue, operational efficiency, combinations thereof. And those executives or CX leaders that aren't able to make that connection, they are on their way out. They do tend to get replaced. But if you see those CX leaders that actually go the other direction, that are saying, oh, well, actually, I am getting connected business results. They're getting not just C-suite adjacent, they're in the C-suite. And there's, several, high profile CEOs of large organizations like HubSpot and Safelite Autoglass, IFS, right? Where their current CEOs moved into that from the CX leader position. Yep. And that's because in any business, those people who understand how to drive business results are going to move up in the organization. They're going to get more authority. They're going to get more resources because they get the job done.
Interesting. But that sounds like it's a great thought. But guys, I'm going to ask you together, sometimes that's easier said than done. And I don't want to put either of you on the spot about any tips about doing that. But if you have any thoughts about ways to formulate that connection, ways to articulate when asked, the financial benefits of the work that we do, because I can't think of too many CFOs who give a darn these days about 2 NPS points if at the end of the day you can't correlate that back to money, to your point, Eric. So is there a tip or two, something that, whether it be a big idea or just a small one, that we can share with our friends out there in the audience about ways to consider better ways to link it up and to articulate the value of this work in terms of money, because that's the only language that seems to matter these days is money.
I think that's the only language that matters in business, like forever.
Right. Nothing's changed there.
Any ideas?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I think it starts with the things that we've been talking about. How does the work that you are doing tie to, did it help us grow our customer base? Did it help us retain more customers? Because every CFO in the world can tell you what a point of retention is worth. They all can, right? They can all measure cost and operational efficiency. They can all measure cost to serve. So are the things that you're working on tied to those things? Now look, there's not a perfect correlation, right? Marketing is going to claim some credit for that. Sales is going to claim some credit for that. Operations is going to claim some credit for that. Fine, right? It's not a perfect science that one-to-one you can claim this. And B, as a CX leader, you probably shouldn't, right? Swallow your ego a little bit and say, yeah, I'm willing to share that credit with other leaders in the organization.
A little bit.
Enable this. Right, exactly. The other thing for me as I've gone throughout my career is build the relationship with the business leaders, understand what's important to them, understand what their drivers are, understand what their business plan looks like, and how are you going to help them enable that, right?
We call that, linking the work you're doing to the careabouts of your stakeholders, right? Exactly.
Well said.
Right. And if you understand what your executive leadership is pointing towards and you're able to align what you're doing to their careabouts, that's significant because you're going to be doing the work that matters and it's going to be obvious. There's another piece of this, and I jokingly say, and it's not really a joke, but it's also accurate, that measuring the impact customer experience isn't simple, but it is straightforward. It's not simple because people and data, right? But it is straightforward because every organization has tons of operational data. They know what they're doing to and for customers, across channels, whether it's, marketing, sales, call center, digital, et cetera. But you can actually link that using, voice of customer technology of all kinds to how customers feel as a result of what you're doing. And it's also relatively easy to determine what it is your customers are doing. How do they behave?
Yep.
So you create those linkages between what you're doing to customers, how they feel about what you're doing, what they do when they feel different ways, right? And if they stay longer, guess what? Customer value, retention, those are good. If they leave, that's bad, right? Yep. But then you link that back up to business results. And it's actually a fairly straight line. And if you're able to gather the data, link that data to the business results that your executives are focused on, it's, again, I hesitate to say straightforward, but it is. It also not simple, but it can be done. And when I started this business 22 years ago, at this point, I couldn't have sold a single contract with any company because customer experience was a so what? What is it? Right? Unless I was able to say, by doing this, I can help you make money. I can help you save money.
That's right. Along those lines, you were talking a moment ago about how sometimes fuzzy these connections can seem between the work that we do and the financial outcomes, especially in the sub-discipline of voice of the customer. Right? Measuring your customer's experience is very hard to connect those dots. But I'm going to say there's one part of VOC where you absolutely can connect the dots in a very hard math way. And that's in this idea of closing the loop or customer rescues. And this whole idea that if you can detect through data and analytics that your customer is in some form of distress, they're angry, they're frustrated, they just report they had a bad experience, there's sort of a social contract that you have between you and them. If they took the time to share that feedback with you and it was concerning enough of an experience where they took the time to explain that, I think you owe them a call or at least some kind of real honest follow-up.
It may be a social contract, but it's absolutely not a binding contract based on all the feedback I've seen.
That's a fair point. But I think it's to our own
and your own personal consumer experiences.
Yep. And I don't think I've ever been called back by a company that says, geez, I'm really sorry you were so upset. Or thank you for your feedback. We've decided to fix X, Y, and Z. Never happens.
But but I'll tell you how it made me feel. Like, I'm an Apple guy. and I bought the recent iPhone at the Apple Store. And, they sent me the Apple Store survey like 38 seconds after I bought the phone. And instead of giving Apple the high grades that they normally, I think, deserve, because I'm an Apple fan by saying that, I gave them all very low grades. I gave them all like 1s and 2s and 3s out of 5, straight down the entire survey, 25 questions, submitted the survey to them on the phone screen. It cleared off and it said, "Thank you for your feedback. We appreciate it. Have a good day." And that was the end of the interaction. And I said, I never felt more like just a row in a database somewhere than I was at that moment. And I was really hoping that Apple would have somehow even acknowledged the feedback that I took to share with them. And they didn't. And they never did. So, not hours later, not days later.
Was it actually a horrible experience, or are you straight lining to get a response?
I was trying to provoke a response.
Okay.
And the honest fact, I said I was testing to see if they would follow up with me in any capacity, whether automated or an actual outreach. And there was none. And I said, it feels like they've broken that contract with me of in some ways owing me the respect and time to follow up with me about it. And I could tell you, I've seen in other companies where there is a situation that comes up in some feedback or some data or analytics that you run. When you choose to follow up with these customers thoughtfully, in my experience, at least, you have the high likelihood of taking a bad situation and turning it around. People talk about there's two parts of kind of the net promoter mentality, one of which is very much kind of amplifying your promoters, but also rescuing your detractors. And in some ways, it's a relatively straightforward, straight line to take a low-scoring detractor, if it's a situational case where they're causing this problem, to turn that situation around and move them up to at least a passive.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things in VOC. There's plenty of studies about this. If you rescue a negative experience appropriately, you're going to end up with a more loyal, higher score customer over time than if you did nothing, right? So that peak end theory, so to speak, right? So
we saw that. I did some work for a credit card issuer a number of years ago, and they discovered with us the most loyal customers are the ones who had a problem that was fixed, even more so than those that never had a problem. Right? It was pretty, at the time, I was like, well, so let's just go mess up all of our customers and then go fix them. Right? I mean, it was sort of said tongue in cheek, but that was sort of the point. Yeah. Guys, let's take a few minutes and I'll talk about taking this idea of customer experience and embedding it, making it kind of more systemic in the organization. And I wanted to tell a story that I touched upon the other day in another recent post of mine, and I think it's good to provoke us here. It goes back a couple of years ago when I was brought to a client of mine, a regional bank in their case, and I was brought into the chief marketing officer's office, and she said, "I want to do this work. I want to focus on our customers better. I really want the ability to make a difference." She said, "I think we'll go do this work that I've been proposing to her. And she's going to just go tell her boss, and we're going to be off to the races and run and work on this together." She called me back a couple of days later, and she said, "We're not going to move ahead." She said, "We can't get clearance from the C-suite to invest in this right now. They're not sure it really matters." And I kind of chalked it up to, okay, win some, lose some, and we'll kind of move on. At the end of the day, she called me back 3 months later, 4 months later, and she held up a sheet of paper on a video call like this, and it had 4 or 5. Have you ever seen these pillars, like this old kind of PowerPoint clip art, pillar art of like people used to do, like our 5 pillars of our strategy, right? And she had her 5 pillars of her strategy laid out on that sheet. And she said, "Look, we're going to do it. Customer experience is it's a pillar. We're moving ahead with this." And I said, "Ooh, that's not so great." And she was a little surprised. And I said, "Tell me about the other pillars for a minute." And she said, "Well, look, we got one that's like digital transformation." She said, "We got one that's kind of innovation and some other things." And I said, "Dumb question for you." I said, "Why is this new renewed enthusiasm about focusing on customer needs and outcomes a project?" Because pillars are projects. Why can't we take that customer pillar and in effect tip it over? And if we tip it over, we could make it kind of foundational to the other projects, the other pillars. in a way that allows us to say, why are we, I don't know, transforming our digital business if not to better the customer? Or why are we thinking about the hard work of innovation if not to improve the customer? And this is all about taking these ideas and making it systemic or component of these other focuses versus being project itself. And I told her the danger zone of it being a project, at least in my experience, going back to my diet story, is that eventually diets end and eventually projects end. And what happens when projects end in the world of customer experience is we tend to fall back on our old ways and our old thinking, and we find ourselves getting old results. It's like going off my diet when I hit my goal weight and going, let's celebrate with a bunch of pizza and some ice cream. At some point I'm going to be putting the pounds back on and then wonder what happened. And I said to her, I'd rather you think about this. And I said, here's the secret data point. If you become an enabler to these other things, you don't even need a budget. I said, you can take their budgets and you can partner with them in some of that work to deliver better outcomes for those customers. Guys, what are your thoughts about taking customer experience from a project mindset to more of an embedded mindset, and how do we kind of cause that to grow legs in an organization? Is there any ideas or thoughts that we can help our listeners really activate CX better in a more impactful way?
Yeah, I'll jump in quickly on this. Well, maybe not so quickly, but there's first off, I'm less and less seeing CX looked at as a project. So I recognize that was fairly common, but most organizations that we work with, that we interact with, we talk to, don't see CX as a standalone thing. The challenge they have is when you tip it over sideways, is how do you actually connect up all the different parts of the organization? And they are, CX is still looked at as a department, as a group that has its own set of responsibilities, and they're expected without budget, without influence, to essentially, well, you use the analogy of saying, hey, just take some of their budget. That's not very easy to do. People tend to hang on to their budgets. And Eric, you're in the captain's chair on this one. It's a pretty difficult thing to actually make happen. But what we do see, and we talk about this kind of as an analog, it's like customer experience. You think about, the business as a cake, right? Customer experience is an ingredient in the cake. It's not its own slice, not its own cake. Yep. It's not a separate thing. It's part of everything. And the other thing that we look at, I've been saying this for sometimes, if you think about, quality movement, right? Or safety. If you have an organization and, you're manufacturing, you don't go, oh, wait, hold on a second. We need some quality on this product over here. Let's call the quality guys and have them come in and make it quality. Or safety. Oh man, we're only 38 hours since someone was injured last. We better call the safety guys in and have them figure out how to overlay some safety on this thing. It's like, no, you need to make CX part of how the organization works. And you do that, in our experience, by embracing the organization and creating connective tissue across the organization from the top and from the bottom. The internal customer champions, executive teams, all those kinds of things where you're bringing leaders and influencers at all levels across the organization, side to side together, with the objective of helping customers. And there are passionate people in every organization that want to do this, but they don't have a forum.
Interesting.
Yeah, totally agree with you there. I obviously I've been in CX my entire career, and yet I chuckle that we've created this cottage industry called CX, and here are the must-dos and all of the tactics and tools that you need. I'm like, so since commerce started, right, has customer experience not been embedded in this since the beginning, right? Take care of a customer, you'll sell to them again. Take care of a customer, you'll sell more to them in the future. Right? To your point, Michael, it has to be embedded. It has to just be part of the DNA of the company and how you do business, right? And I think you hit on some key points there. Yes, you need champions, you need other things. I refer to it as governance, right? You need to build a governance model that says, how are we infusing the customer into everything we do? And so stand up a governance council, get your key leadership and people that own the key customer touch points together on whatever the right frequency is, monthly, bi-weekly, whatever it is, and say, hey, What are we championing together across the stovepipes or across the silos of our organization, so that we're infusing the customer in what we're doing here?
Yeah, there's the experience operating system that Mark, thank you, by the way, for talking about Diane's in my book in your last podcast. But the experience operating system, which is really the framework that we've lined out to help organizations do exactly that, which is embed CX in systematic, consistent, scalable ways. It's centered around human. And oftentimes organizations think about customers as segments rather than people. And it's a broad generalization. There's some truth to that. It's not perfect, but also employees, right? Your people are also human, and understanding that CX EX connection you're talking about briefly in the, when you started this off, that's a critical component of it. And going across the organization brings your people, your humans who work with your organization into the process, and it brings your customers into the process as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, Michael, I love that, because in my various roles over time, I'm always telling people, hey, don't take your customer hat off when you walk in the door of the organization, right? We're all customers after 5 o'clock or whatever it might be. Don't take that off, right? Would you want to be treated that way as a customer? No. Then why are we doing it, right? So to your point, it goes back to being human and thinking about what do humans want and need and expect.
Yeah. I actually gave a speech at a Business Marketing Association's annual conference a number of years ago, and it was on customer experience. And I had just a quick little audience Q&A in advance, saying, just want to make sure I focus on what you're interested in. Maybe 300 or 400 people in the room, and several hands went up, a couple of easy softball questions, and one person put their hand up and said, "This is the Business Marketing Association. I don't know why you're talking about customer experience for, because we're businesses. CX is a consumer thing." And Myers, I was kind of taken aback, but I was like, okay, just quick show of hands. Who in this room abandoned all of your kind of emotional issues or your emotions when you walked into your jobs at a business selling to businesses? And everyone laughed, right? Nobody raised their hand, obviously. It's like, customer experience isn't about consumers, it's about humans, it's about people. And people feel things, and we want them to feel the kinds of ways that are going to make them do the things we want. And so, right, I was able to go on and kind of do my presentation or my speech, but it was just interesting, exactly your point, Eric, that there's a tendency for organizations to again, a generalization, right, but to dehumanize. It's not purposeful. It's not, I think, done with ill intent. It's just people get focused on the specific things that they have to do in their stovepipes, and forget about the people that are affected by it.
Absolutely.
Guys, I think that's an amazing point, and it's a great thing to take away from this conversation, and a pretty good place to kind of bring our chat to a quick end here, just to give you guys a little bit of your day back. And so I want to just simply say to both of you, to Eric and to you, Michael, thank you for being willing to join me in this chat and to share your thoughts and some of the results of your hard work out there. And I'm grateful for you to be here. It's kind of my co-pilots on this show. So thank you both. And what I like to do is just wrap that part of the show up, and then we'll get to some housekeeping, and we'll kind of wrap the show as a whole up. So Eric and Michael, thank you for being here. And guys, just a few more minutes together and we'll wrap up the entire show. Those guys are terrific for being here with me, and I'm so grateful that they're here. And I want to be able to show my thanks now to you for being here with us as well. So what I want to do is, I think all good shows need to have a fun kind of giveaway. We gave some books away last month. What I want to do today is take both Michael's book, the Experience Rules book, and my friend Matt's book, the CX and Culture Connection book that I mentioned before, put the two of them together in a box and be able to share some of these with you guys. So we're going to do a bit of a lucky viewer drawing here. We're going to do it at the end of the show, where we're going to take a half a dozen of each of these books and send them to you guys as my thanks to 6 of you guys for being here randomly. So guys, we'll do that. And if you're one of the winners of the pair of books, I'll reach out to you privately, and we'll get a mailing address and mail the books off to you at the beginning of the week. last thing I want to touch on with you guys while we're still here is to simply talk about next month. We have episode 3 of Tales from the Trenches coming next month, when I'm going to sit down and we're going to continue to unpack this idea of CX and EX and how these need to work symbiotically together. You can't have great CX without EX. It's just factually an impossibility. To those ends, I'm going to take the gentleman who wrote this book, Matt Eagle, and he's going to join me on that call in September, along with a good friend of ours. Her name is Audrey Stone. If you don't know Audrey Stone, she's on the employee side of JP Morgan Chase, the huge financial services company. But uniquely, Audrey is in a customer experience minded role in an EX capacity. So she sits right at that line of CX and EX together and how the impact of that is at the bank. So she's going to join us along with Matt Eagle, and we're going to talk about this whole idea of the service profit chain, or said otherwise, happy cows make happy cheese. So until then, friends, we'll see you in the month of September. Dates and times for that call will be coming and posted soon. I hope you join us. It's going to be another great conversation. Thank you again, Michael and Eric, for being here. But most importantly, thank you guys for being on this show with us. I hope you found this to be interesting. I know I did, and I'm so glad that you were here. I'll see you again soon enough. Take care, guys, and thanks for everything. Bye-bye now.